joint report around child sexual exploitation. And I think it is slightly different in the sense that we've got the child protection element within this report as well. So I'll hand over to you.
Yes.
For a report on this. Thanks.
So just by way of introduction, I've asked Superintendent Dave Purven, to come and give this briefing, given that Dave's been leading on this particularly challenging area of work for us for some time. Before we go into all of the detail, what we've decided to do on this occasion, because we have previously reported to you about where we are, and you're very familiar now with the background and some of the teams and so on that we have in place, is to focus more on what's changed since the last report in the last quarter, and also starting to look ahead a little bit about what some of the next range of challenges are that we think we're going to be facing. So,
yeah, just to say, no, thanks for that, and you're right, at the last meeting we had quite a detailed update in the area of child exploitation and the work that yourselves are undertaking along with this office and our partners. So we agreed that this would become a regular item given the issues around safeguarding and vulnerability, and I appreciate Dave coming along to build on the previous report and update on the work that's taking place. Okay.
Thanks, sir. As Chief Constable said, it is a fairly lengthy and necessary detailed report, which I will attempt in my best way to proceed with new and recent updates. But I think it's worth setting in context, first of all, that child sexual exploitation is a priority, if not the #1 priority, for West Yorkshire Police and the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, and does represent a significant challenge in terms of safeguarding vulnerable victims and the investigation of perpetrators. I think it's really worth setting that context.
Yeah.
In terms of the force safeguarding review then, and progress towards changing our structures to deliver improved safeguarding services. So throughout the latter part of 2014 and into the first quarter of this year, sir, you'll be aware that there was a comprehensive review conducted of the force's structures, its capacity and capability, and delivery models for the delivering of overall safeguarding services in force, but specifically around how we tackle child sexual exploitation. So in April of this year, the Force Command Team agreed on the finalised structures to best address the threat, risk and harm within safeguarding. And work is well advanced now to implement the agreed changes, which in the main relate to the structures of district units, the functionality of those units, and the resource capacity within them, enabling the delivery of those services. Key highlights of those changes included corporate and consistent structures across the 5 districts, corporate and consistent delivery of those functions within the district units, and the realignment of resources from other teams within districts into safeguarding to provide that extra capacity and capability. In addition to that, and in terms of a partnership approach to tackling not just safeguarding but CSE, together in negotiation and in agreement with partners, the development in all 5 districts of a multi-agency safeguarding hub and joint investigation teams, which you fully aware, sir, were well advanced within Wakefield, but perhaps not so advanced in the other 4 districts. So I'm pleased to report at this meeting that the districts are very well advanced with implementation of those agreed structures, and at my most recent implementation board, which was 3 weeks ago, and there's a further implementation board this Thursday, each of the districts now report that they have in place those agreed structures and the level of resources that were agreed. In addition to that, each and every one of them also report that they now have up and running a multi-agency safeguarding hub and joint investigation teams with partners. So really pleased about the progress that's been made with that, and what we will look forward to now is a commencement of a post-implementation review in October to get on the ground and confirm that has been reported is in place. So that's really good. Just as an addition to that, sir, 3 of the recommendations that were in the report related to the central governance unit, a very important aspect of delivery, and I can report that more recently the Chief Officer team has given direction of travel on the proposed future structure of the central governance unit, and that currently is in consultation stage with staff. Moving on around working with the Office of the PCC, I think it's fair to report here that the Safeguarding Central Governance Unit is now working with the Police and Crime Commissioner's Safeguarding Advisor and coordinates the CSE Strategy Group. This group is attended by senior district representatives from police and other key partner agencies. The meeting is held quarterly and allows matters of concern and good practice to be shared and disseminated across agencies throughout the 5 local authority areas. The meeting is chaired by the independent chair of Wakefield District Local Safeguarding Children's Board. So therein we've now got the relationship directly with the Office of the PCC and the strategic delivery of safeguarding services, and particularly around CSE. So again, massive move forward and providing improvements. If I can touch on investigations and bringing offenders to justice, recognising that tackling offending behaviour is crucial to the effective prevention of child sexual exploitation and to the protection of victims. This is delivered through professional investigation, effective identification and the targeting of perpetrators, including those potential perpetrators, and robust offender management systems. Some key elements of the strategy that's adopted in force is that identified potential perpetrators are flagged on police systems, potential offenders are referred to the Serious Offender Review Team for management by district offender managers. The force is making extensive use of Section 2 abduction notices, and other orders are being considered in the control of perpetrators. An ongoing programme of training child safeguarding detectives to nationally accredited child protection training is ongoing, and to increase the number of those already trained. Our protective services crime are leading on current large complex investigations around CSE, and in the development stages an investigative toolkit that's been developed as part of the Force Action Plan to tackle CSE. Just around prevention strategies and awareness campaigns. So we all know that child sexual exploitation takes place within our communities. It goes without saying, but it's important that we encourage and raise awareness and understanding to prevent children from becoming victims. It's crucial to victims and public confidence that the response of the police service is reflected accurately through the media and other public-facing communication methods. And in that, a media strategy is in place as part of the Force Action Plan, police-led county-wide multi-agency awareness raising through the CSE media group. A county-wide event held with Sheffield Futures regarding friend or foe learning resource to encourage integration of CSE messages into PHSE lessons in school, and collaboration with Crime Stoppers in What's Love Got to Do with It campaign. Safe Schools officers have been trained, as I think you know, ambassadors, and community engagement work is ongoing in all districts. Good to report, I think, that most recently a campaign to address the rising problem of sexting has been launched across West Yorkshire entitled Think Before You Send, and You Can't Undo, Can't Go Back. Really, really valued piece of work, I think. Just to report on the current position with staffing with civilian investigators within CSE legacy teams. The current numbers of investigators stand at 24, and that's following some recruitment in August. I report that we've gone through some further recruitment, and in fact as recent as this morning I carried out the final interview on that recruitment process, and we will look to recruit a further 5. We're looking for 6. We've identified 5 who are of the calibre that we'd like to take in, which will take the numbers total up to 29. We would have hoped to get to 30, but unfortunately the calibre of candidate that came through didn't allow us to do that. But again, we're now staffed up to 29 across the districts, which will help tremendously in tackling those legacy cases.
Just to be clear, these are in addition to the teams that are already in place.
Correct. This is numbers over and above addition from that extra funding that was provided from the Office of the PCC.
Yeah.
And in addition to the 120 resources we've moved into it, which you're already aware of a couple of years ago. So this is the
we must be approaching now somewhere in the region of 200 extra officers within safeguarding units, over and above where we were in April this year.
Yeah, and that's that takes account of the realignment of resources into safeguarding, child protection, child sexual exploitation. That is absolutely the priority. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then just to touch on then what's happening on the ground now from that. And this is a stark difference to where we were 12 months ago, when we were having tremendous difficulties in dealing with those legacy cases because we were having to use the resources for those current and ongoing cases. But that increase in resources now allowed us to tackle those legacy cases. And the current position is this. There are a total of 180, and this is to the end of August, 180 ongoing, current, so that's less than a year old, CSE investigations, of which 115 are contact offences and 65 are online offences. Those offences involve a total of 121 identified victims and 157 identified perpetrators. Of those 157 identified perpetrators, a total of 124, as at the end of August, have been arrested, of which to date 23 have been charged with offences and are pending prosecution. Investigation continues against the remainder. In terms of non-recent or legacy cases, so those are those cases that occurred more than a year and a day ago, so in some cases 10, 15 or 20 years ago. So the force currently has a total of 41 ongoing non-recent or legacy cases, of which 40 of them are contact offences and only 1 is identified as an online offence. The 40 legacy cases involve a total of 146 identified victims who are being supported by those legacy teams and 190 identified perpetrators. To date, of the 190 identified perpetrators, 40 have been arrested and processed and 19 have been charged and are pending prosecution. And of course, with the legacy cases, much more difficult in terms of investigation, and it may take a little longer time to get there with it and to identify perpetrators as you was going.
So just to say, so So, as an example, in the news this week, there's been some announcements of prosecutions of
Yes.
or arrests. Arrests and identification of perpetrators into care homes in the Leeds district, for example.
Yes.
And that's just one example of this ongoing work that is going back over many years.
It is, and that investigation goes back to the 70s.
Yeah.
Now identifying as victims have the competence to come forward and tell their story about what happened to them whilst in care.
Yeah.
Gives us the opportunity to identify those who worked in that environment and make those arrests.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's been another case actually in Bradford as well where there's been some heavy custodial sentences handed down to perpetrators in the Bradford district just this week as well from a case from a few years ago.
Yeah, and with the full support of CPS and with public opinion with this type of offending, that heavy sentencing is what we're seeing.
Yeah. No, and yeah, it's important that we do highlight where these cases are brought to successful prosecution, and the message is clear that we will not tolerate anybody taking part in these horrific crimes.
Well, I think the key message that we've been constantly giving out over the last couple of years is encouraging victims to come forward and give us the information so that we can actually build up the case.
Yeah.
And clearly we are prioritising those cases, to look at where is it legacy and where might there be some overlap into current cases.
Yeah.
So quite understandably in terms of the legacy cases, those are the ones that we've been prioritising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very different playing field to what it was even a year ago in terms of the investigative capability, in terms of the forensic opportunities, in terms of actually the cultural changes within policing and prosecution to go against these perpetrators. It really is a different place.
And also, in fairness, the willingness of the partners to support us, to give us the information, to notify early signs.
Yeah.
The whole thing is coming together in a much more comprehensive way.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. Was that it, Dave, in terms of the reporting?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. I think one of the questions I was going to ask, we've probably already touched on that around the numbers of investigative officers,
yes.
the additional ones that we provided funding for last year and this year as well.
Just on that, sir, and on the funding,
yeah.
I've had forecasts from management accounting around how long that will last with the numbers that we are running at. And if we remain at the 29 that we will have in up next month, I anticipate that the funding will run out by December 2016 into January 2017, which will mean that that has run the full 2 years, because we got the first intake in December.
Okay, and I'm sure in conversations going forward with the Chief Officer team, we will keep that under review with regards to the sustainability and what is required as we move forward, depending on the number of cases and the victims that come forward.
I think we have to accept that we recognise that this is going to be a finite amount of money for a finite amount of time, and therefore the focus of that team has been on trying to go through legacy cases, but clearly what we don't know is how many more legacy cases might get reported to us. Yeah. So we will keep that under review, and obviously prior to the additional amount of funding that you made available, some of those safeguarding teams were indeed already dealing with some legacy matters. Yeah. But it does give us a really good opportunity to try and really focus in on those cases where we may be able to help bring successful prosecutions and give victims some kind of recourse at the end of the day.
Yeah, and as you said, I think the partnership approach is absolutely crucial in achieving success in this area and providing the support to victims, and having the establishment of the West Yorkshire group now with the safeguarding coordinator based here with an independent chair of that group is really helpful. So we will continue to bring that group together on a fairly regular basis to monitor the coordinated work across West Yorkshire. So perhaps one of the questions following on from that is you touched on the structures in the 5 safeguarding units, and perhaps if you could say a little bit more around the progress that is being made specifically in each of the districts.
Okay, in terms of adopting those structures and functionality, to be a question, sir, the last report to me was that we're there. We are there with that. And as I covered in my earlier report, my position will now be going forward to get out on the ground in October and check that all that's said has been done and is working. So we're then moving into standard operating procedures and those other matters that once your engine is in place and all your resources in place, we make sure that it's working efficiently. So that will be the plan going forward, to confirm and check and audit that we've got in place what we say we've got in place and it's working.
I think it would be fair to say that we are still wrestling with having some officers who clearly specialise in a particular area around safeguarding versus having the flexibility of almost omnicompetence. And we're still trying to determine what the best way forward for that is, because in some areas it is easier actually to have almost a specialist approach. In others, because of volumes, it isn't. But having said that, we recognise we've moved quite a lot of relatively inexperienced staff into this area of work, and we're just going to work our way through that with the training and everything else and see where that actually best fits. And also perhaps what best practice both the College of Policing and HMIC might recommend.
The current position on that, sir, is that we're split across the force. There are 3 districts that operate omnicompetence, i.e. they're dealing with child protection and adult protection issues within one investigator, whereas 2 of the other districts have specialists for child and adult. The jury's out on what's best yet, and that has to form part of the post-implementation review to see what actually works best on the ground.
But it's a thorough approach in all
Yes.
all instances.
Oh, absolutely, thorough approach.
Yeah.
And actually, some districts will say it works better for them omnicompetence because of volumes and dealing with what's coming through the door at the time. Whereas perhaps in the smaller districts, it works better for them having specialists.
Okay, right, well it'd be interesting to see what the eventual outcome of that is with regards to the analysis of the work that's undertaken. And at the outset of the report, you also referred to the review that was undertaken and the recommendations that were brought forward as a result of that. Are you satisfied that the recommendations are being properly implemented?
Yes.
Sorry.
I am. In fact, it's another area of conversation at the Programme of Change Board next week, which is obviously one of the governance mechanisms that we have, and Dave will be presenting an updated report as to where we've got with that. So I am happy that good progress is being made.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I don't think there's anything else I want to ask on this, other than to say thank you for the continued progress, for that update, and clearly it's an area that none of us can be complacent about, given the victims that we know are out there, and increasingly it is good that they do feel confident to be able to come forward, be listened to, and the appropriate level of investigation and consequent action then taken where those investigations clearly lead to perpetrators being arrested and then prosecuted eventually. So, as I say, it is something we will keep as a regular item, but you know, I don't underestimate the amount of work and dedication around with the staff within West Yorkshire Police and with our partners that happens on a daily basis. So I've been out there and spoken to many of them myself.
I think if you recall, Commissioner, just a couple of months ago we actually had a very comprehensive review undertaken by the College of Policing in terms of a peer assessment. My understanding is that they are now thinking about being able to issue an early interim report of the findings of that. And again, I think that's going to be incredibly helpful to us in terms of identifying areas of best practice, because if you recall, the feedback that we initially received was quite supportive, and they did see some things in West Yorkshire that they felt could feed into that process. So again, always willing to learn from others, but I'm hoping that they would have seen us in a good space at the moment.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, thank you.